Hi, I'm Dey Young, and you may remember me from Star Trek Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, and Enterprise. And you're listening to Trek Untold.
Hello and welcome to Trek Untold, the Star Trek podcast that goes beyond the stars. I'm your host, Matthew Kaplowitz. The great thing about acting in Star Trek is that it's not uncommon for the same person to appear throughout multiple shows, and oftentimes, multiple series. People like Phil Morris, Juliana Donald, Eric Avari, and many other guests we've already had on the show have done it, and today we can add another of those performers on that list, since today we're speaking with the fabulous Dey Young. Dey has 3 appearances in Star Trek history, starting in the TNG episode The Masterpiece Society, where Dey played Hannah Bates, a scientist from a genetically cultivated society on the brink of being wiped out. She returned to the franchise a few years later in the DS9 episode A Simple Investigation as Arissa, an enigmatic love interest for Odo who's got quite a story behind her. Finally, she appeared in the first season Enterprise episode 2 Days and 2 Nights as Keyla, another mysterious woman who spent some time with Captain Archer on Risa. And Dey's sister also appeared in Star Trek, but we're going to save her story for a different episode. Dey's resume has over 100 credits in TV shows and films, including Rock and Roll High School, Spaceballs, The Serpent and the Rainbow, Freddy's Nightmares, Diagnosis Murder, The X-Files, Jake and the Fat Man, Melrose Place, The West Wing, JAG, Mad Men, The Mentalist, and a few other shows we're going to discuss in today's episode. These days, Dey continues to act, but also pursues her other love in the arts, which is sculpting. Dey is an accomplished statue maker with art seen around the world, working in unforgiving mediums like marble and bronze to make some outstanding pieces that I can't wait to share with you today. And as a personal note for this interview, for some reason, I felt like I was extra fumbly with this one, so I'm a bit disappointed in my own performance in this episode. Hopefully you won't notice it too much, but I think some things are going to definitely be a little bit more noticeable than others. And I didn't just want to reshoot my lines just for the sake of making myself look better, especially because I didn't want to lose the energy that I had with Dey going into this interview. But I was definitely having a bit of an off day, and I feel a little self-conscious about it, so I hope you don't mind that I was a little bit more tongue-tied than I usually am. So let's get ready for a lot of Trek talk and plenty of stories from a very long career in arts and entertainment with the one and only Dey Young. Now, before we start this week's episode, I want to ask you, are you following Trek Untold on social media? If you're not yet, please make sure to check out Trek Untold on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook so you can get the latest updates on the guests we're speaking to each week, along with all sorts of other great things we show. If you've been enjoying this show, please consider supporting us by checking out our merchandise on teespring.com/stores/trekuntold, where we've got mugs, t-shirts, cell phone cases, and all sorts of other crazy stuff you can buy to show off how much you love Trek Untold. Or please consider supporting us on Patreon by visiting patreon.com/trekuntold. We've got a few different benefit tiers that help us out and give you a little something extra each week for the show. If you're a new listener or a regular listener who hasn't done this yet, please, of course, don't forget to subscribe to us whether you're watching us on YouTube or on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or any other audio or video platforms you might find this show. And if you've been enjoying Trek Untold, whether it be the audio version or the video version, please make sure to leave a rating and review on iTunes or wherever you're checking out the show. Or if you're watching it on youtube.com/nerdnewstoday, make sure to leave a comment and give us a thumbs up. Those little tiny things that'll take you a few moments to do will help this show out for light years to come, and ensure that other people are able to find Trek Untold and give it a listen. And if you're a member of this audience who has already done one or several of those things already, thank you so much for your support. And if you haven't had a chance to do any of those things yet, we still thank you very much for choosing to listen today to Trek Untold. There's a ton of other Star Trek podcasts out there, and there's only so many hours in the day, so we really do appreciate you choosing this one to check out for the time we're spending with you now. I'd also like to make a quick shout out to our sponsor at Triple Fiction Productions, who make some amazing 3D printed Star Trek inspired dioramas and props for both Star Trek action figures and Star Trek fans in person. Whether you're a cosplayer or a toy collector, there's plenty of stuff to check out from Triple Fiction Productions, but you're going to hear a little bit more about them later on. So without further ado, let's begin this week's episode. Computer, access interview file. And welcome back to Trek Untold, and now joining us on the other side of the screen, we have Dey Young. Dey, how are you today?
I am doing great, thank you.
We have a lot to talk about because your body of work is enormous. I was looking through your resume and I'm just like, shocked by how much there is on it. So there is a lot to talk about. You've had quite a career, and I know these days you've taken a different journey in the arts, and I hope we get some time to talk about that today too.
Oh, absolutely. I love it. I do both. I do both the sculpture and the acting. And at one point I thought, oh, I got to make a choice here. But then I said, no, they're both a passion. So keep them both going strong. So that's what I've done.
Yeah, I'm very curious about that balance. We're definitely going to talk about that in a bit, but I got to
Okay.
ask you, Day, the first question I ask all my guests on Trek Untold, that's what is your earliest memory of Star Trek?
Wow. Gosh. Well, this is going to be really embarrassing to tell because I was really never a real Trekkie. And when I got the script, when I got the job, and my first job was on Next Generation, and I was reading the script, and I'd gone in, and I'd really nailed my auditions, and I think I met twice on it to get that to play Hannah Bates, and so I got the script, and they talked about beaming up and all of that, and I literally had to look that up. So I I literally am a neophyte when is that the right word? I just had no idea about any of it. So I think I was aware of it, but I was never a Trekkie, and I had some friends in high school who were really into it, and that was a different crowd that I didn't run in. I was a little more bohemian and all of that, but there were definitely a Trekkie group. And yeah, I had to actually look up what it meant to beam up, am I even saying that right? Beam me up or whatever. I think
That's
I say
correct. Yep.
yeah, that's how bad I am with it all. But then afterwards, I so got into it. So that's my honest story.
That's all right. We don't expect everybody to be Trekkies when they first do the show. So,
Yeah.
I mean, you were basically probably a theater artsy kid, and that was like the sci-fi nerds hanging out in the AV closet, right?
I was, but I was really an athlete too. So I was a field hockey, all Detroit West Wing star. So that's where my energy was into a lot. And then I did theater arts once I got into high school. So I really, yeah. So I went. It all unfolds, doesn't it?
So, can you help us paint a picture of your origin story, if you will? Can you tell us where you grew up, what your parents did for a living, and what Day wanted to be when she grew up?
I was born in Indiana, and my parents moved very young to Michigan. And then I was raised in Birmingham, Bloomfield Hills, Michigan, which is a suburb outside of Detroit. My dad was in the computer industry very early on. It was a company called Burroughs Corporation, and they were the ones who helped supply NASA with the computers and all of that. It was like a really a big competitor to IBM. My mother was brilliant. She had a PhD, but she gave it all up. It was the American dream, and she gave it all up to support my dad and raise children. So, but she always had an eye for theater and an eye for the movie. A big follower of movies and art. She was a docent down at the Detroit Art Institute. So that also was where I got a big entrance into art. But my real entrance and into the idea of going into film and theater and all of that was because it was from my sister. I have an older sister, 10 years older, Lee Taylor Young. And so she kind of, after high school, she left college, much to my parents' dismay. They were horrified that she would leave college because one of the number one things in our life was going to college, education, education, education. So, but my sister, forged a new path. She went to New York, and she got a Broadway show and came out here and hit and ended up being in Peyton Place and marrying Ryan O'Neal. So it was like, oh, wow, this looks so easy. And oh, it looks so much fun. And so all of a sudden I get to high school, and I'd always been into dance. I was as well as being an athlete, I was also into dance, modern dance. I was in a lot of concerts and all of that. So dance was always a huge thing for me. But then I said, okay, what am I going to do with dance? So I decided to go into theater arts, and my sister and I ended up going to college out close to her in California at Pomona College in Claremont, and being a theater major there. And yeah, and then I went to London and I studied at London Academy of Music and Dramatic Arts. So I did follow in my parents, what my parents wanted, which was training and education. Whatever you do, you work hard at, and you do your best to be able to present to the world the most, the best that you are. So that was what I did. Yeah, that's kind of it in a nutshell.
That's quite an education that you've had in the arts there, and I know you also are a lifetime member of the Actors Studio too, correct?
I am. And I think that, it has stayed, it's a bit ensconced inside of me to keep my training always going. So I've always been, I believe very strongly in always being in acting class and keeping my craft going. And, it's a crazy business. We don't know when we're going to get a job. We don't know. We don't know how it's going to come to us, and it can be just coming out of left field. And my getting my first movie, which was Rock and Roll High School, in 100 years, I was the last person they saw to play Kate Rambeau. And I had just come from spending 2 years in London at the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Arts. I came to Los Angeles. I didn't have an agent, and I happened to be at a party, and a casting director came up to me and they said, you should meet on this Roger Corman movie. They're really looking for Kate Rambeau, and they can't find her, and they'd already cast BJ Souls to play Riff Randall. And I went and I met with Alan Arkish, and that was like on a Friday, and I started on Monday. So that's where things come out of left field. It's just unbelievable. And it's the exciting part of this industry too, as well. So, but I am very, very getting back to the Actors Studio. And sorry, I went on a little segue there, but it is part of the framework of what makes me who I am, the working hard on your craft and continuing to keep it going. I do it today. I'm very active with the Actors Studio.
I am definitely glad that you went on that tangent, because I did actually want to ask, in fact, about Rock and Roll High School, because that is such a whirlwind of a film. If folks haven't seen it, there actually is a bootleg hiding on YouTube somewhere, not that hard to find. But yeah, can you tell us a little bit about your? Oh yeah, have you watched it anytime soon?
Oh yes, because I do get interviews, and if I go to conventions, other than the one amazing convention I went for Star Trek, which I hope to be invited another time, but I went once, and that was a couple of years ago. But I go to a lot of conventions for Rock and Roll High School because there is a huge cult following, and so PJ and I will go to a few of those, and I try to go to one at least a year. So. I definitely have to keep up on Rock and Roll High School. And I love it. What a wonderful first movie, and what a wonderful education, to do a Roger Corman movie and really work 12 hours a day, be thrown in the thick of it. And yeah, it was a great experience. And the Ramones, meeting the Ramones, my God, there I go. Oh my God. Here I was again, another story that was so embarrassing, of not even knowing who the Ramones, when I was cast, not even knowing who the Ramones were, but it was so perfect for Kate Rambeau. I had no idea I didn't even know about punk rock. And so everything that happens in the concert scene where PJ Soul and I have to walk into the Roxy on Sunset and go and make our way through this punk rock group to watch the Ramones. I mean, it was shocking. We were bashed around. We were, they had to stop it, actually, the filming, because they were getting so out of hand and stuff. And the punk rockers were so into the Ramones. So that was a real education too.
And by the way, we know at the start of this interview that you mentioned you weren't really a Trekkie or anything like that, but you have had the opportunity to work with William Shatner on two occasions, at least two occasions. And one of those was in TJ Hooker. You were in the episode Requiem for a Cop. You played the daughter of one of TJ's friends, and you had a lot of scenes with William Shatner. Do you remember much about working with him back then?
Oh man, he is just amazing. Well, I also did
Boston
Boston
Legal.
Legal. Right. Yeah. Oh, did you just mention that? No, you didn't yet, did you?
Not yet. No, that was the other appearance you had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Spoiler
that
alert.
was right. In Boston Legal, that was probably the most memorable one for me. But TJ Hooker, that was just, again, me being a young actress, getting an opportunity and going there. But he was highly professional, very kind, and had a bit of a sense of humor, which I really got to experience more when working with him on Boston Legal. But what a gem of a man.
Now, did he actually remember you when you were on Boston Legal with him?
No, of course not. No, I mean, I just, I said, well, I once played, no. Do you know how many little cops came on that show and people who just, yeah, it was, no, he didn't remember me. But it's okay. Hopefully, if I ran into him, I'd say, "Hey, do you remember me? I was the call girl with the ash leg because I had an ash leg, and you and I have an affair on Boston Legal." I think hopefully he'd remember me.
So another thing that our viewers today might remember you from is Spaceballs. You were the waitress in that famous scene with Chestburster. Oh my God, such a great scene. What do you remember about that day and working with Mel Brooks in particular? Because I love hearing good Mel Brooks stories.
Oh my God. Well, my Mel Brooks story, he to me was like the Wizard of Oz. I like going to meet the Wizard of Oz. And that was an experience which was a first time again for me, which was a small cameo part, but very memorable. And I mean, it's crazy when people will come up and ask me and remind me that I was even in that movie because it's really so little of a scene, but still, it was very memorable. Mel Brooks, it was done, Spaceball was done on huge stages. And I was a space waitress, and the place I was working, the cafe I was working at, or the soda pop place I was working at, was a stage over from where Mel Brooks was. He was about 2 stages over in this box, with other people, and on a megaphone, literally yelling, "Space waitress, move to the right, make sure his tail gets under your skirt." I mean, it was like, you go, "Oh, okay, yes, great, thank you, Mel." And that was the experience of working on that, is that I don't even remember if I saw him. I saw him in the audition. He was very, very charming. And from my brother-in-law at the time was very close friends of his. So I had met him socially, he and Anne at different times, but really this was an experience where it was the Wizard of Oz yelling out at me to move 2 inches to the right and make sure that the tail, he was all about the jokes and getting the joke and making sure that the tail got up, up my skirt and stuff, that John Candy's tail got up my skirt. So that was my Mel Brooks experience. He was fantastic. He was brilliant at what he was brilliant at.
Mel Brooks and John Candy experience too, because John Candy, peak of his career at that point too, and what an amazing actor he was.
Oh yes, what an amazing, and Bill Pullman, who I
Yes, and
also
Bill Pullman,
worked
yeah.
with again. I love Bill Pullman. I worked with him in Serpent in the Rainbow, and what took me to Haiti, and let's see, did I work? What year was Spaceballs? Do you even know? Oh God, I'm trying to think. Well, anyway, I think Spaceballs happened maybe before. I don't know whether it happened before or after.
1987. Just Google that right now.
Oh, you did? Okay. Well, Serpent in the Rainbow then was right around the exact same time. And I don't remember I don't think I had met Bill yet, but we spent a little time down in Haiti together working on this movie. And again, a wonderful actor and a gem of a person. I mean, that's the wonderful thing about my business. It hasn't been as of recent where I've had the opportunity, but it's taken me all over the world. And that's amazing. I've worked in New Zealand. I've worked in Haiti. I've worked in Dominican Republic. I've worked in London. I've worked all over the world. Germany a lot. I've done a few movies in Germany. So it's just been a gift, and I love to travel. So it's been, and Canada. So yeah.
And you've also been a salesperson in a store in California because you were also in Pretty Woman with Julia Roberts, and like one of the most important small scenes in the film, but there are no small scenes, of course, but one of the most
Yeah.
important scenes in that film that really stands out. What was it like with working with Julia Roberts back then?
That was a wonderful experience. I mean, I'll just tell you about the whole experience of even getting the job, because it's again, a part that comes out of left field, a small role. You don't think it's going to have any kind of, fan base at all, but it's a movie that, well, the movie just keeps on giving. It just, people love it. And that scene is voted time and time again as being the most memorable scene, and the scene that keeps getting repeated, and that people really go back to loving so much, being the bitchy saleswoman. But I met Gary Marshall. I had done a couple of movies for the Disney Channel, playing opposite Alan Thicke. And Alan Thicke had invited me out to a tennis party in Carpinteria, California. And I ended up being partners on the tennis court with Gary Marshall. And we beat a couple of times the people across the way. And man, I was in his book. He loved it. He loved it, And then he said to me, and then he finds out I'm an actress and had worked with Alan, and he said, "Oh, call me. I might have something for you." So I didn't actually call him, but he called me, or he called my agent, or my agent was called, and I went in and I met on Pretty Woman, and he threw a couple of scenes at me, and this one landed. And again, I was on the set and in the dressing room with Richard Gere and Julia Roberts, not the dressing room, the makeup trailer with them. And it was just a wonderful, wonderful experience. Julia was very, she was fresh and new and excited. And this was, the role that was going to absolutely make her, which it did, and put her on the map. And it was exciting to see that. And she was very gracious and fun to be with. And I've had one experience where I ran into her on another movie a couple years later, and she came up to me. We were in the line of at a premiere, and she came up and was standing behind me, and she goes, "I don't know if you remember me, but I'm Julia Roberts, and I said, yeah. Okay, yes, do you remember me?" So she was very sweet and gracious, and I haven't seen her in many years, but it was a great experience.
I find it interesting how it's always scenes like that where it's just like those are the ones that are most impactful in the films. Like we spoke with Alex Datcher, who was in Passenger 57 with Wesley Snipes, and she was there in the scene where he says, "Always bet on black," which is like one of the most well-known quotes in movie history also. But that day she didn't think it was anything really important. She doesn't remember anything from it, in fact. So yeah, it's kind of funny. Just again, did you think that was going to be such an important scene to the film and just almost film history, really?
Yes, absolutely. Never thought it would be. But I mean, if you think about it, it really, it just epitomizes the shopkeeper and Beverly Hills and what people think about it and all of that, and being very snooty and all of that. And it fit perfectly into the movie. So and the dialogue is just so great, and and her coming back and saying a big mistake with the bags. So people who rarely am I recognized on the street, but occasionally people will come up to me and they'll say big mistake, so I'll get that occasionally, where people will do something like that. And so it was, again, a shocker. It's shocking to know the movies that really stick and the parts that stick. I mean, people remember me from that, and I've done huge roles in littler movies, and no.
One last thing, actually, before we talk about Star Trek, in fact, and this might shock you to know, but here on Trek Untold, we love Angela Lansbury, and we love Angela Lansbury stories. And I know you did an episode of Murder, She Wrote, which was, I have it right here. It was Something Foul in Flappyville. So yeah, if you got any Angela stories, please, I'd love to hear those.
Well, the really interesting thing is my daughter is best friends, one of the best friends. My daughter's 34 now, but she was best friends and continues a relationship with Angela's granddaughter, Catherine Shaw. So so it was kind of part of the family. I mean, Angela didn't know me as an actress, but I would go to birthday parties and see her there and all of that. So she was just a wonderful woman and a kind woman again. And my daughter Shane would often, love going there, having, all those kind of stories and coming back and playing with Catherine. And so my daughter probably could tell you more about Angela Lansbury. I mean, she's very professional. Oh my gosh, very professional. Ruled the set. It was a real treat to be invited on her set and to work with her. And she's an inspiration. She is a woman, an actress who I inspire to, she keeps working. She just keeps it going. And it's a philosophy I feel, it's never over. Who knows when your break's going to come and all of that. So I just keep my nose to the ground and keep doing it and keep doing what I love to do. And she loves to do it and she loves to tell stories. So, it was a great experience. But yes, I knew the family. So that was also another side of it.
Did you get to have any interactions with her on set or off set, I should say?
Oh yeah, yes. I haven't seen that episode in a long time, but didn't I have a few scenes with her? I'm sure I did.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. So, she was very professional. So it was all about the work on the set and, all about the work. So, and her son Anthony would direct a few of them, and her husband, it was a family business in many ways. Her husband was a producer. So it was just on the set, I found it was down to work, down to business, and all about the characters and getting and making the day, because it was like a family business, it was like, all of it was. How many years was that show on? I mean, it was...
Oof, yeah, it never ended to me. I mean, it's still on in my head.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy. Yeah, I haven't seen that one in so many years. So that is really a flash from the past.
Trek Untold will return momentarily. Trek Untold is brought to you by Triple Fiction Productions. If you're a Star Trek cosplayer looking for props, or toy collector looking to spice up your shelves, Triple Fiction Productions has you covered. Triple Fiction Productions produces affordable and unique 3D printed Trek-inspired products from the original series, Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Enterprise, and the movies. You can expect the same amount of care and attention to detail in any of the items in their catalog, whether it's a prop replica for use in a fan film, or part of a cosplay, or accessories and playsets for figures from Playmates, Migos, or Diamond Select. Own your very own tricorder or phaser rifle with working lights, the bridge of the Enterprise E for your Playmates figures, or any other item from countless species and ships from the Star Trek universe. All products are 3D printed in the USA and are constantly evolving and improving based on fan feedback. To learn more about their products, visit them at triple-fictionproductions.net or on Facebook at facebook.com/triplefictionproductions. Triple Fiction Productions, taking Star Trek where no 3D printer has gone before.
Hi, my name is Walker Brandt, and I was privileged to play the role of Cadet Hajar in the episode The First Duty, Star Trek The Next Generation. I was also a guest on Trek Untold a few months ago, and during my interview with Matt, I introduced my new book, Awaken, Discovering Yourself Through the Light of Your Innocence. The dedication in Awaken reads to the human spirit, the final frontier within. I'm a Trekkie, I'm a fan, and I have always believed that the final frontier is our unlimited imagination. And the reason I wrote my book is to support the reader, to always remember that when you combine your unlimited imagination with your innocence, that playfulness as a child where you had no fear about the unknown. In fact, every single day you woke up into the unknown and you wanted to explore. That's been my journey. And that's how I believe that we change our reality for the better together, because we're all creators and we're all explorers. So I ask you, what excites you? How will you expand and go where you've never been before? What steps will you take to embrace the unknown? So Awaken, Discovering Yourself Through the Light of Your Innocence, is there to support the reader, to share my journey, to let you know you're not alone, to let you know that if you've been through challenges and difficulties and times in your life where you felt like you just couldn't go on, I've been there with you. And this book is there for you to encourage you to keep getting back up and moving forward into the adventure. So I hope you have a chance to read it. It's titled Awaken, Discovering Yourself Through the Light of Your Innocence, and it's available on Amazon. And it's a #1 international bestseller. So I hope you get a chance to get on that journey with me. And if you'd like to reach out to me, you can find me at walkerbrandt.com or on my social media, Facebook, Instagram. Thanks so much, and I hope we get a chance to connect.
We now return to Trek Untold.
So, Dey, we could easily spend hours, if not evenings, weeks, talking about everything you've done in your career, because there's so much to discuss. But we got to talk about Star Trek, because that's what we're here for today. So let's start with your first of 3 Trek appearances. That was in Next Generation, Season 5, The Masterpiece Society. You were Hannah Bates. You already talked a little bit about your audition process, but can you give us some more details about what that was like?
Rick Berman, who, was amazing and very specific about his casting and the dialogue being perfect, and everyone on that set. It was one of the strictest in terms of being true to the dialogue and everything written, the written word that I've ever been on. I mean, even to the point, and if you remember, I had a lot of psychobabble to do, and it was, I don't know if I could do it today. I mean, being the age I am now, because it was so dense, the material, and I didn't know what I was saying half the time. But I think I had about 3 auditions before I got that. And I had gone in number of times on that show. Maybe this was my 5th, 6th audition, not for this part, but, where I would get close and sorry, next time. But at least they kept me coming back. And then once you got in, they wanted you for other shows too. I wish I had done all of them. I in retrospect, it was just such a great franchise, and with such a beautiful message, great messages. And so the experience of auditioning was that I just had to be letter perfect and operate with the confidence that I think all of their characters have, as a confidence in the spoken word and what they're saying and how they're delivering it, and with the passion behind it. And so, yeah, I nailed it. So I was fortunate. And then I got on the set and I was doing great, except for, there'd be a couple times I would leave out an article like "the" or "an" or something like that, and I'd have to go back and do the whole entire thing, So they were, as I said, they were very, very specific. I loved working with Levar Burton. He was wonderful on that, on the set. And man, the sets were amazing. They were just so amazing. So here, someone who knew nothing about really this franchise and had not been a fan, really, I just was ignorant to it. Not that I wasn't a fan, it's just I didn't know about it and it wasn't in my realm. It soon became, because it was so specific and beautifully done with, as I said, amazing messages. The sets were beautiful. Everyone who worked on that, from the grips, the cinematographers, the makeup, the hair, everything was done to such a precision and with such a care and love. and passion. So, you were entering into a very highly professional, you just had to match it. You had to bring your best game. And that's what I tried to do. It was a great experience.
It really seemed like it.
Yeah, I think it was I heard later, a very controversial episode. I don't really know why. Do you know why?
It's definitely an interesting episode. I know I've actually, I was in fact to ask you about this later in the interview. I know that the director, Vinrich Kolb, the late Vinrich Kolb, he said that he liked the concept, he liked the script, but he wasn't really satisfied with how it turned out ultimately. So yeah, I mean, I guess it was a pretty interesting kind of story, but
yeah,
and one that's kind of almost topical to this day too.
Yeah, really. I mean, it is very topical to this day. And then the idea of, God, I don't mean to bring politics into this, but I've often thought, of leaving a country like America, because I'm not happy with the politics of where I am at, and I was ready to leave my utopian community because I wanted to have freedom and freedom of speech, freedom of thought, of be able to expand, and what the spaceship offered, and that new experience just opened up my horizon. So it is very topical.
You spent a lot of time in that episode with Levar Burton, as we mentioned, and you guys have such great rapport. You're just basically like two tech nerds hanging out together. I love it. How'd you get along with Levar?
Tell you something. If you really knew me, I am so not technical savvy. As a matter of fact, I was having a hard time getting my internet to do this interview. I was like going, oh my God, please tell Matthew I don't mean to be late, but my internet's not connecting. So I am so technologically not with it. So it was really an actor stepping forward to play the part, and Levar was wonderful. And because they were regulars, they had been doing this for so long, so he just kind of took me. This is easy. We're having fun, and yeah, we became like techno nerds.
So yeah, this episode I mentioned, directed by Vinrich Kolb. Do you remember much about his directing style? And did he have to help you in some cases with those techno babble lines, kind of get you into understanding them and how to act those?
Gosh, I just remember him being very, very specific and all of that about it all. But I really don't. I have to say that I was not as I don't remember it being a real personal connection, like as compared to my experience on Deep Space Nine, where that whole experience was a very heart-wrenching, which we'll get into, experience all the way around. But this one was more, I think it was a lot more just buy the book, do the work, and again, just being very specific about if I missed a beat or if I wasn't performing or getting the lines. I just remember it a lot about being getting the information out. So yeah, and so that, I'm sorry to say, I don't remember the exact experience of working with him. I'm sure maybe other people do, but.
Well, it's perfectly all right. I mean, but you also brought up a good point here I wanted to talk about a little bit, and that's kind of going deeper into the fact that you're reading this techno babble that you don't necessarily understand, but you now have to act it and show that you do understand and make it understandable to the audience at home. So, as an actress, how do you approach a challenge like that?
Well, I think I was a little scared. I think, here I am out of my element in many ways. I'm not really a scientific mind, even though I did play. I get casted a lot, Kate Rambeau, and here I am playing a top scientist in the universe, who I'm brought onto the ship to help move a planet away from a meteor, or a meteor away from the planet. I forgot which it was, but I felt that I really had to rise to the occasion. And I have a lot of passion in my life, in everything I do. I have passion for my acting. I have passion for my sculpting. And the one thing about Hannah Bates is she was very passionate And so I just zoned in and brought in the passion of what I was saying. And I believed in a lot of what she believes in being able to have, gosh, you know, and I should have reviewed seen the whole episode before doing this interview, because I'm really talking out of not having seen it for a while. But, you know, the idea of being able to have control and free choice of our life and where we go and where we live, and not living, and then again, you know, to be in a utopian world, and knowing that if one person leaves it, it destroys that world. It has the potential to destroy that world. That's a huge responsibility. And so as it said, it was a masterpiece society that had been created. But with that masterpiece society, there was a lot of missed opportunities. And for someone who had such an expanded mind, I wanted to go further. So I know I've taken the answer into so many different directions, but I brought my passion for what I love to do in my life forward, and just brought it forward with Hannah. Now, I didn't necessarily know what I was talking about, how I was going to move this planet, or how I was going to move this comet out of the way, or meteor. I think it was, no, it wasn't a comet. I'm not, anyway, one of the two. But I just got behind my words in the way that I do with my acting and all of that. So I just try to bring my A game. And as I said, I was scared because it was out of my element. It was a new experience walking onto this set, someone who didn't even know what it meant to beam up, you know, and like really trying to pretend I knew everything about it. Play the role.
So we go from Hannah Bates to Arissa in Deep Space Nine in the episode A Simple Investigation, which is quite a change in the characters you've been playing here, because Hannah is kind of a lot more bubbly in some ways. Serious episode, but Hannah's a little bit more bright and cheerful. Arissa is a very mysterious, enigmatic character. This is very reminiscent of like a film noir style movie in a lot of ways. What did you think about the character of Arissa?
You know, I think back on that experience and playing that role. It is one of my favorite in all my career. Just everything gelled. It was, first of all, working with Rene, and the director, John, was amazing. He was a wonderful director, and he encouraged the chemistry that Odo and Arissa had. And I think that's what really gelled in this. And it was a love story. And I literally fell in love with Odo during this time. And, you know, it was, yes, I was supposed to be mysterious and all of that. But the bottom line of this whole episode is the love that they have for each other, the connection. And then finding out at the end that she's someone else that she didn't even know about, and that she has to, you know, she has to go back to her husband when she loves this Odo, you know, when she's fallen in love. It was, I loved the experience. I loved working again. It was an experience that touched my heart, and I will remember forever. And it was probably one of my best experiences, acting experiences.
And that director for that episode, by the way, was John Kretschmer.
John Kretschmer, thank you. Oh, and you know, I'm still in contact with him via email, and he was wonderful to work with, very specific in what he wanted. I had a challenge on that because they have to move fast on these episodes. And so I had a number of scenes in Odo's office. And so what they would do, and it was the first experience I'd ever had in my career where they would, out of order, you would do all my coverage coming at me in like 5 different scenes. So it wouldn't even complete the scene. And then we would do Odo's coverage, all, you know, scene 2, 9, 11, all from that angle. So we were out of, it wasn't no sense of continuity. So you really had to be on your game and aware of how it was being, where you were in the scene and all of that. So one scene earlier on that I would have done, where I'm supposed to be, maybe very mysterious and cold and aloof in the beginning of the scene, in the beginning of the episode, we're doing from this angle. And then I have to go to a scene later on where I'm professing, the more intimate scene and come to my room and things like, it's all of a sudden like, and it's the next scene. And then I have to go back and be on his, on the other side for him and going through it all again. Are you following me about how they would shoot a lot?
Yeah, that sounds like a nightmare.
I don't know if I'm making any sense, but it is, it was the first time I had ever done that. I've had to go on and do it since then. It's not a way I love to work, but I'm willing to work anyway because, there's the continuity of really creating a scene and being there and being in character and then having to change your character and then have to go back to your character to be there for the other actor. So it was a challenge.
And on top of that, I've heard that typically on Star Trek shows, you don't really get rehearsal time. You're kind of just thrust right into it, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I don't even know if we had rehearsals at all. But, that is the graciousness of the cast that was on every single one of the shows, especially the first two that I worked on, which was Next Generation and Deep Space Nine, was that they were old pros. They had been doing it for so long, and they were welcoming, and they brought you in, and they kind of took you under their wing, and you felt a part of it, and they brought you in and to do the best job because they knew one of the beautiful things about all of this franchise was the guest stars had the most amazing roles. They really had amazing, meaningful roles. And that has never been the same. I mean, not been my experience on other shows since then, that where they really give the great roles to the guest stars, in many ways.
And that's totally why I do this show, to make sure I get those stories told, because they're pretty great.
Yeah, they really are.
So, of course, we mentioned plenty about Rene already. He's one of my favorite actors in all of Star Trek, and Odo is, I think, my favorite character ever in Trek.
He gave me a parting gift. I mean, we had such a connection. And I mean, I literally fell in love with him. He was just an amazing human being. And it was a gift that was given to me. I mean, the gift of working with him was really such a generous actor and a human being.
Well, I've got to ask, because you were the first person, I believe, to actually kiss Odo on the lips. So how the heck did you find his lips is what I want to know.
They were wonderful lips. Let me tell you. No, that was a real, I think the beauty of it all was, I didn't have any, as you know, Arissa, until the very end, doesn't have any kind of, I didn't have any, what is it called?
Prosthetics?
Prosthetics, thank you. I had nothing. I had myself, and that was Arissa. And she, so he could easily find me, but, it's all in the eyes, and so it was really, I mean, Rene's eyes really came through his prosthetics, and so it just all was so natural. It was seamless. It just was such a natural thing. It was a beautiful love story, and everything flowed easy, with the exception of, as I said, how they would film it, but the bed scene, we had a bed scene. Yeah, it was fantastic.
Yeah, you were the first person to ever sleep with Odo on the show. What is that like?
I loved that. It was fantastic. I felt so honored to be able to get into his bed.
I heard, by the way, Rene had to actually shave his chest for that scene too. Is that true? Do you remember that?
Yes, I think so. I think he had to. I think it was like, I think I lay in his arms. I mean, oh God, it was one of those fantastic experiences. And it was the chemistry that we had, I think. It was a beautiful, loving, chemistry, and I especially liked her because she goes through such growth and change, and she has a real arc in the episode, and it's very heartfelt throughout the whole thing. You know, she might start out very mysterious and, you know, all of that, and she's on a mission, and but by the end you really know who she is.
So I don't know if you're aware, Dave, but there's actually now basically you're part of a Star Trek meme. So someone found a few weeks ago a trading card from the Deep Space Nine trading card series, and it's a card of you and Odo in bed together.
No!
And it's shirtless Odo, it's you in bed.
I've got a Pretty Woman meme, but I didn't know about that. Can you send it to me?
I will send it to you. You're now a Star Trek meme.
My phone number. Oh my God, that is fantastic. I love it. And it's us in bed?
It is you guys in bed together. You two are cuddling. Rene is on top of you. It is too hot for TV.
Oh no, you're kidding. I love it. Oh my gosh, that is fantastic. Thank you, Matthew, for letting me know. My gosh.
Do you remember if Arissa was ever talked about to return to the series?
Well, no, because unfortunately she has a husband, and she really had a whole different persona on who she was, and she had been, I think, hijacked and had something put inside of her in her brain, where she was sent out to be a spy, and but it wasn't who she was. So she goes back to, and I'm just going to absolutely embarrass myself on this show, but what is it that I become again at the end? One of those.
I don't remember the exact alien. We'll just say you went back to your home planet. Make it easy.
Yes, thank you. And one of their aliens, and it was a very popular one. It was beautiful, and it had the little forehead here, and oh gosh, I felt more beautiful as that alien than as Arissa, but and the wardrobe was beautiful. Oh. Anyway, that is one of my favorite scenes, is going and saying goodbye to him at the very end. I mean, it makes me cry even today. It was such a heartfelt goodbye, because I think it was like one of the last episodes with Rene too.
Great, very, very good episode.
Obviously, you can tell it made such an impact for me.
Yeah, I can definitely tell. So let's try and get you away from the tears for a moment. Although as much I do enjoy seeing them, let's move on to another mysterious character you played. Your final appearance in the Star Trek franchise, another mysterious lady. This time you're in Star Trek Enterprise in the episode 2 Days and 2 Nights, and you are Keyla, a vacationer at Risa who happens to meet Captain Archer, played by Scott Bakula, and you spend pretty much all your scenes together with Scott. And
my dog,
and your dog. That was your actual dog?
No. No, I would never have that kind of dog. I'll show you my little Westie I have, who's really like a little Dennis the Menace, always digging in a black snout and everything. But I know this was the most perfect dog. Oh boy, it was, I mean, you know, very perfect. Because I think Scott had a dog throughout the whole, right? As his pal.
Yeah, he's got Porthos the Beagle.
There we go. Well, you know, again, I am so, the experience of Deep Space Nine so overshadows that one, because I think I was only, even though it was a guest star role and on all of that, but it was shot pretty quickly. And I mean, maybe it was 3 days, 3-4 days on that. And yeah, I turned out to be a bad girl. And the other ones I had played a good girl, but it was the experience I really remember of that is being in makeup and having them airbrush those tattoos all over me, which were so beautiful. Oh my gosh. I mean, the tattoos down my body was like unbelievable. And so I was supposed to be a seductress and all of that. And I loved working with Scott. He was wonderful. And I would love to work with him again. I mean, I think he's a fine actor. And I don't have stories about that one, except for being in makeup for hours with the tattoos, the airbrushing, and the dog, and all of that. But that was a lot of my scenes with Scott were me being on a balcony and communicating with him on another balcony. So it wasn't like always really close up, except for when he comes to my room and I think he, well, I think I trick him or something. I don't remember. I don't remember the episode so much. I'm sorry, Matthew.
Oh, no, it's all right. Let's see if we can refresh your memory a little bit here. And I'm wondering actually about your wardrobe for that one, because you mentioned how much you liked the outfit for Arissa. Do you remember what you wore in this Enterprise appearance?
Well, I had like yeah, everything was very sexy. I mean, what I remember the most was the makeup and the tattoos and the hair that yes, everything was, they just made me like look like a goddess. It was like goddess attire in a sense, right? Yes.
Pretty much, yeah. You're like wearing a swimsuit. You've got like a sash around you. Did you feel comfortable wearing all that? Were you excited to be in something a little bit less constricting? How was that for you?
I mean, I don't know, am I comfortable with it? I mean, no, I think I prefer more clothes, but I felt like a little bit clothed with the tattoos, I have to say. I mean, a lot of the costuming was around me making sure that you saw my tattoos and all of that. They were just beautiful. They were they weren't they were very subtle in a sense, but beautifully done. Because I remember looking back at a lot of pictures regarding those. But yeah, so no, I don't necessarily enjoy being scantily dressed and all of that. It's not my favorite thing. But I think the reason why maybe Keyla is not as memorable for me is because she didn't have a lot of, I mean, she didn't grow as a character. She didn't, develop as a character. She just came to serve a purpose. And then, that was it. She didn't, it wasn't as fleshed out, I felt, as a guest star part as either Hannah or Arissa. So that was my experience of the character.
I mean, as a viewer at home, I can see that there definitely felt like almost, I don't want to say disconnection, but I mean, I can clearly see how much more you enjoyed Arissa versus Keyla, because the material was a lot more beefy, if you will, as Arissa.
Yes.
But Keyla, it was very much like you have a secret, but it was just very conflicted, I guess. That's kind of the way to put it. That's the way I saw it.
And I had an arc, I had a real arc, and Keyla really didn't. She was there for a purpose, and she had her mission, and it gets aborted, I think, and that's it. It wasn't like I became a love interest of Scott, or I became, or there was really any big connection at all. It was all kind of a red herring in a way, kind of role.
So we mentioned your sister earlier in the interview as well, and I'd heard a story that, she was, by the way, of course, also in Star Trek, but you didn't actually know that for quite some time.
I didn't know it until she didn't talk about it to me. I think she was in, which one was she in? I don't even know. I'm not even sure which one Lee was in.
I want to say it was either TNG and Voyager, but I can't remember either, unfortunately.
Might have been Voyager. I know probably, I don't think it was one that I was on. And I'm not sure, I think she did it after, and she just never told me. I usually know what, she just didn't tell me. Yeah, I wasn't even aware that she had done one.
She was in Deep Space Nine, actually. It's Deep Space Nine, season 7, and she was also in, okay, that's it, just Deep Space Nine, yeah. So she was, yeah, so your sister Lee was in Deep Space Nine.
Okay, great. Oh, that's right, because, yes, Scott had thought about having us go to one of these conventions together, a Deep Space Nine one, actually. So yes, that's right. Yeah, no, she never told me. So, I wasn't aware of it. So there you go, small world.
So having been on 3 different Star Trek series, how would you describe the feeling on set for each one of these? How were they different?
Well, I think it also had to do with the characters that I played, of course, because that brings a lot to what your experience is going to be, how you approach a role, how you approach all of it. So I found that well, let's start with the first one I did. I think you probably already know the answer to all of these because it's kind of how I explained them. But the Next Generation, I thought the cast was amazing, very professional. For me, it wasn't as intimate of an experience. It wasn't as it was, most of my stuff was with Levar. And it was, I think it was an important episode, but it was a lot more. I have to, say I was a scientist on it. So I think that's what it was, more cut and dry, more scientific, more to the point, more, a little more sterile, I think, than my experience on, and so I can't really tell you whether that was just me, Dey, and my experience because of the character I played, but I found the set. I found them all to be gracious, very professional. Patrick was amazing. I mean, what an astounding actor. So I didn't really see any dynamic there because I didn't spend a lot of time with them as a group. A little different, I think, with Deep Space Nine because I'm all over. I move. My character moves a bit, and there's a lot more intimacy. And as I said, I had a big arc there, and it turns out I'm not who I think I am, or I don't even know who I am, and so it was a lot more emotional. The other one was a lot more heady, Next Generation, and I found that Deep Space Nine was more of an emotional, intimate experience for me. And the last one was really a little more disjointed for me, and I think it was because of the character that I played. I just didn't have a handle into the show, and I don't know. How long was that show on? Was it on for a while?
Enterprise only went for 4 years. So the other two went for 7.
Yeah. And I don't know if I'm reflecting maybe that or what, but I just felt that it my story wasn't a story that I had passion behind, and that it was the story that I could get behind, or that my character was that important to it. So maybe that's the reason why. So does that kind of answer the question?
I'd like to spend some time today also discussing the other part of the arts that you work in. We spent most of this interview discussing your acting career, but as we alluded to earlier, you're also a sculptor now. You work in bronze and stone and very large, amazing sculptures. I was able to actually find some video and some photos of your work. It's beautiful, marvelous looking pieces. Can you tell us a little bit about when you discovered your love of sculpting, and in particular with these big kind of, permanent objects? We're not talking clay here as much. We're talking stone and marble.
Yeah, I love stone and marble. That's probably my big passion in terms of that art form, is working in stone. I found it in college. I was a theater major and very dedicated and worked hard. And I even went over to Europe and worked with a man by the name of Grotowski, who was quite a renowned Polish teacher, and had amazing experiences as a actress. But in my senior year of college, I was fulfilling a credit, and it was that I took a sculpture class. And I took to carving, and I had to go out in nature and bring back something, and I brought back a lotus bud, and I sculpted this lotus bud. And the teacher was a man named Aldo Casanova, and he was a amazing artist in himself. He's in airports and in UCLA Sculpture Garden. And I remember my mother, who of course loved art, she was a big fan of his, and she came to, and I introduced her to him. And she said, "Oh, someday I wish I could own one of your pieces." And he says, "Save your money and buy one of your daughters." So it was kind of like, oh my God, he really thinks I'm good. And it was just the one piece, but I went on, and it was one of those experiences that just kept giving back to me. I loved I would lose myself. It's such a different medium than acting. Acting is you're connecting. It's a communication, connecting. This is you and your stone. You and I have always. I've been one of those sculptors who looks for the angel within the piece or the object within the piece and looks to go in and release it and set it free. And that's really how I deal with stone. Now, clay is a whole different thing where, you know, you're starting with, maybe you'll get a commission or someone will say, hey, will you do this or this portrait of someone, or will you do a dog, or will you do whatever? And so you're starting with an idea that has been given to you and starting with clay and building it up as opposed to taking it away. And both of them are you know, I love working both ways, but my favorite is the stone. And I've gone to Italy and brought back a couple of tons of marble. And that's where you've seen probably my big marble pieces that are now, I have one in a church, in front of a church. And, you know, I just love it. And I feel very grateful as an actress to have had that, because you know, you never know when a job's going to come. You never know when you're going to be able to do that creativity of being an actor. So this, I can just go out and I now have brought my sculpture studio home during these COVID times and have been sculpting from my backyard as best as I can. But again, stone is, the older I'm getting, it's a lot more challenging to work with because my back is taxed. It's really taken a toll on back because you have to be able to move these pieces too. And both my ex-husband and my present boyfriend would be here to tell you that after being with me a number of years, they say, don't come near me with one of those pieces of stone. I am not going to move it or help you, because it really, you know, does the numbers. So yeah, that's my answer. And I love it. I love it. As I love acting, I'm so grateful to have these two passions in my life that I have been able to dedicate my life to. And my daughter, I have to say that. I have to hone in as a mother too.
I noticed that a lot of your work tends to be about the female form, whether it's representational or an abstraction of it. In fact, like the ones I enjoyed the most was Fertility, Madame Butterfly, and the Three Muses pieces. Those really spoke to me. So what is your fascination with the female form with these sculptures?
Well, that is something you'd have to ask many sculptors, you know, through time. I mean, the female form is so beautiful and so evocative and was so curvaceous and has its and so many secrets within it and everything, that I think that it just naturally is something that I gravitated to. Also, it's a form that I'm also a sculptor who feels my own body a lot. And a lot of my pieces, you'll look and people say, did you use yourself as a model? Because a lot of them are thinner work or whatever. Yeah, the other subject matter I have done is I've done a lot of sculpture when I have been, and this is more my bronze work, like I did a piece after 9/11 called The Sky is Falling, of a woman reaching up and trying to hold up the sky, a nude woman. And then I recently just did, during this COVID time, and a piece about Black Lives Matter. And I tried to take an experience of what is going on in our world and try to be able to experience it out into my art form. And that's what I've done. I also did a piece after Katrina, as I think I started out with earlier, mentioning to you that I was into modern dance in high school and studied Martha Graham. And so I have a pose of Martha Graham being like in these waves and trying to get out of her costume, kind of, that's so dramatic. And I used that for my Katrina piece after the hurricane. So yeah, I look for where there's inspiration out in the world And then also I go inside to find it as well.
My uncle was Hank Vergona. He was an illustrator here in New York, and he did a lot of work in various magazines. And for himself, I did a documentary about him. And one of the things that was kind of one of the keys in the film was for him, art is life. And I think most artists have that same kind of thought process. Art is life. And I think it's especially a great metaphor for the different arts that you're doing, because you look at something permanent like the sculpting in bronze or in metal, or basically things that are subtractive versus additive. So
Right.
working in stone, it's subtractive. Working in marble is subtractive. Oil painting is additive. You're always adding more to build onto it. And so I feel like with acting in particular, and also with all forms of art, but really in acting, it's more about stripping away the unnecessary elements to find the core of what speaks to the character. Because after all, acting is observation and imitation of life. And that's what you're doing with all art forms, essentially. I'm kind of curious to know what your thoughts are on that idea, just basically stripping away those elements to find the core of a character, and how your philosophy on art in general has informed your choices in acting.
Wow, that's such a great question. Well, I think that both of my art forms have informed each other. And as I think I said to you at one point, I had wondered whether or not I should, and wondered whether I'd be more successful in it with just doing one of them and going all the way and just focusing in. And then I had come to God moment where I said, no, how can I stop my art when it feeds me so much? It gives me. And yes, I think that they both feed each other. I think I look inside of a piece of marble and I have to go to the essence of it, what I see inside of it. And I have to do that with the characters. I have to go, every character I look at, I look at what is the need of this character? What is it, the driving need? And I think that when I look inside of a stone, I said, what needs to be set free? What is that angel inside of there that needs to be set free? And so yes, I've never really thought of it that way, but it's a beautiful, beautiful metaphor to think that, yes, every character has an angel within it, and setting that free is something that also I can definitely see the connection with my artwork.
And so for our people in our audience today who like to check out some of your artwork, where can they go to look at it?
Well, you can go to my website, which is www.dey, D-E-Y, Young, Y-O-U-N-G, art.com. So that would be the best way. And I'm very accessible. I mean, people, a lot of people come in my home and buy pieces, and I have a lot of my art out on my front lawn. And I mean, it's just, I love to share it. So it's, as I love to share my acting also. So thank you, Matthew. That's so sweet of you for me to be able to put out my website.
Of course, that's what we're here to do. So Dey, last question for you today. What is the best thing about being a part of the Star Trek universe?
Oh, gosh. What's the best thing about it? Well, I'm part of a community, which is really, I think, amazing. I think it's one of the things I'm most proud of, being a member of the Actors Studio, being a part of the Trek community, Star Trek community. So I think I'd have to say that it's a community that I'm very proud to be a part of.
All right, well, Dey, thank you so much for your time today. I mean, there's so much more we could easily talk about here, but you got things to do. I know that. And yeah, I appreciate all of your stories. I really recommend that all of the people in our audience today check out deyyoungart.com, learn more about what our guest today has been doing with her sculptures, with her art. I mean, Dey, you truly are the epitome of the term artist, of that word. So thank you so much for all of your contributions to entertainment and to the arts. And I look forward to seeing some more of your work, and hopefully one day getting to California and seeing it in person.
Oh, where are you, Matthew?
I'm out in New York. So
all right.
Don't think I'm getting over there anytime soon because of COVID, but hopefully when this is all wrapped up.
Yes. Well, you're always welcome. Let me know when you're in town.
Oh, well, thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. It was a pleasure.
And that was our chat with Dey Young, and I do sincerely hope you visit her website after this episode to see more of her work and learn more about her passion for the arts. Today we talked about Enterprise being Dey's final episode in Star Trek history. The episode is not necessarily one of the best from the first season of Enterprise, but it does have an interesting fact attached to it. As we mentioned, 2 Days and 2 Nights was directed by Michael Dorn. As of now, this was the last episode that Michael Dorn has directed in Star Trek, and he only did one Enterprise along with 3 others in Deep Space Nine. But what's interesting is not so much the direction here, it's more so that Michael Dorn is the actor who's been in the most episodes about Risa, and that's between his time on TNG and Deep Space Nine. Most notably, Dorn appeared in the DS9 episode Let He Who Is Without Sin, which is really an episode better left not talked about, but either way, it's a surprise to know that Worf is actually more associated with Risa than Commander Riker. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Trek Untold, and shout out to Scott Ray for helping provide this week's guest. If you'd like to book this person to appear at an upcoming convention or autograph signing event, email scottray67@aol.com. Whether you're listening to this show on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or any audio platforms, or our YouTube channel, youtube.com Nerd News Today, please make sure you subscribe to whatever format you're listening to so you can ensure you get the new episodes of this show as soon as they come out. And that's every Thursday on audio platforms and every Sunday on YouTube for the video version. Please don't forget to check out our Teespring store to check out some of the merch we have for this show at teespring.com/stores/trekuntold. You can also support this podcast by visiting patreon.com/trekuntold to become a Patreon. We've got a few different tiers there that offer some different benefits that you might enjoy, so please take a look if you can. If you want to get updates on who's going to be on the newest episode of the shows, please follow us on social media on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, all at Trek Untold. That's one word, no spaces, Trek Untold. But one of the biggest things you can do to help out this show is to interact with us. Whether that's leaving a rating or review on iTunes or wherever you're listening to this podcast, or leaving a comment or giving it a thumbs up on YouTube. It costs you nothing but time and helps out this show tremendously to get more attention and get more listeners to help this podcast continue to grow and expand. So until next time, I'm Matthew Kaplowitz, this has been Trek Untold, and remember, fortune favors the bold.